call out of Egypt. Break the bonds of slavery.
Shalom, shalom, and welcome everyone, and I want to welcome you to the Hunting Blind with DAEL. And know your video pictures, there's nothing wrong with it. We are doing this in black and white, and we have a reason why we're doing it. We're getting down to basics, and when I mean by basics, right now I have my special guest. I have RICO CORTES. RICO,
how are you, brother?
Doing good. Actually, we're here right now at the REMNANT House of Study in Statesville, North Carolina, and RICO just got through doing a teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's on some of the covenants that he's been talking about, and tonight's was on the threshold covenant. And I'll tell you what, this has opened up, listen to some of your, the salt covenant, the blood covenant that you've done on radio and on your website and stuff, has really opened the doors and let me see some things that I've never seen before and answer a lot of questions that you don't see that in the Shah or the New Testament. Now I want to break this down for people who never heard this before or seen it, or they're maybe new, and or maybe they're still in the church system and would like some information. And because from what you bring forth with the covenants, really gets into the basics of having a relationship with their Father.
Right.
So, and the first thing I think that you brought forward tonight was the covenant, or the threshold covenant. Give us a little detail on the threshold.
Yeah, one of the things that in the church, when the church system, when they're preaching, they talk about Yeshua as the door. You know, he's the door, he's the door. But very few people actually go back to the ancient Middle East to understand about ancient thresholds and what threshold covenant meant. So when you see Yeshua dying on the tree, and John mentions that the soldier took the spear and basically wounded Yeshua on the side, and Yeshua shed blood and water. Well, the moment that blood hit the ground on the Mount of Olives, it really made, the Mount of Olives is considered the threshold of the house of God. It's called the doorway of heaven. So Yeshua dying there, he becomes the guarantee of the covenant through his blood on the place he died. The threshold. Remember the blood covenant teaching that I did? Mm-hmm. That you got to cut the animals, mm-hmm. and then you got to walk by the pieces? That explains why Yeshua died between two men. Flesh.
Oh.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So the one who died is the one who passed through the pieces as the burning torch back there in Genesis 15. So it's all threshold. So the moment the blood came out and he shed the blood, that represents threshold and blood covenant too. That's why the blood concept in the New Testament in Brichat Shah is so prevalent in the writings of Paul. Because he's trying to talk to you in the ancient language that very few people understand nowadays. So threshold really has to do with the moment in the ancient, actually in the Middle East to this day. I had a gentleman from Pakistan. And he told me, he says, that the elders of the community taught him when he was a kid that when you go to somebody's house, you are to never step on the threshold, but to always step over the threshold. Because if you step on the threshold, you show irreverence and you show disdain to the owner of the house and the deity they worship. So therefore, if somebody comes into remember Paul when he will go to the synagogue and they will not listen, mm-hmm. and they reject him, what did he do? He did what with his shoes? He dusted off his shoes, right? It doesn't tell you where he did it, but he did it at the threshold. That's a language, it's a key language, but it doesn't explain more than what it is, only because they understood the context. We are the ones that don't get it because we're in the West.
The West, yeah.
So it's understanding the Bible from Middle Eastern mindset.
That's one thing, because I know when serving in the military, I was there for doing peacekeeping duties back in the late 80s. And that was one thing we were taught, you know, especially that we weren't allowed to show our feet to the bottom, you know, because it was a disrespect to them and using our left hand and stuff. But here, you know, unless you're in the military or you go there and you're actually taught, you're not taught all this stuff about the Middle Eastern customs and stuff like that. And I think that's where our church brothers are missing a whole lot of information on,
Yeah.
like you said, because they're not getting the actual meaning of
The context of what they're reading, and this is prevalent even in Judaism. It's also the same thing in Christianity and the Hebrew roots. Remember that we are so far removed from the Eastern mentality, the East, the Middle East, and we don't really understand the form and the covenants the way they were made in the ancient world, and this is the problem, because even Rabbinical Judaism, as much truth as they do have, but remember the Jews have been dispersed through all the nations for the last 2,000 years, and the 10 tribes have been scattered for 2,700. So what do you have? A mixed multitude. We have mixed people, different customs, different cultures. But if you really want to get an idea about ancient customs, go to the Bedouins. They understand these principles. Like, for example, have you ever understood why Syria right now, the king of Syria, he is hammering one town, Homs. It's this ethnic, and it has to do with tribal. He is basically hammering them. He's not attacking any other place in Syria, he's hammering that town. There is a controversy between them both. You see, it's all about tribes. We saw the same thing. Remember the story of King Saul when he took the ox and he cut it in 12 pieces? Mm-hmm. And then he sent it to all the tribes of Israel. And people say, well, that kind of sounds strange. Because what he was trying to say is, in the ancient covenant of the pieces, you needed to cut up an animal. And then people will walk through it. The two people come in covenant, they'll walk through it, and they will come to an agreement, they make an oath, and then they will say, may what happened to those animals may happen to me if I break this covenant. So because King Saul is the king of Israel, and because the 12 tribes compose the kingdom, he cut the animal in 12 pieces to let the people know, remember that we are all covenant brothers. If you do not show up to stand up with me as your king, what happened to that animal would happen to you, because you swore that you will be faithful to the covenant. You see? Oh. So now we understand the language. Threshold's the same way. In Iran and in Armenia, they still practice that if you come to the house and you're a special guest, they want to welcome you as a member of the family, they will slaughter an animal at the threshold of their home to show you that you're part of your brother now. And they can't do you no harm.
Now, can we also take that, because where the tabernacle set up in the wilderness, the sacrifices were brought to the door?
Exactly. And what color was the door of the tabernacle? It was purple, red, and what's the other one? Purple, red, and blue. So therefore now it was red. Is the bloodline, is the threshold. That's why you need to kill the animal there and shed the blood there and then on the altar too. That's why. It's all about covenant.
Cool.
Can I add something? Hi everybody. We had a member of our congregation that went over to the Middle East, and she, like Rico was saying about the Bedouins, they know all this. And she said that while she was over there, she went to one of their houses, or I think it was actually, yeah, I guess it was a house. And she mentioned a painting on the wall. She's like, oh, that's a nice painting. She said the lady took it off the wall.
I know that lady. She told me the same story.
Oh, really?
Yes. She came to my house and she told me that. I'm glad you brought that up, because she told me the same story. Because the lady put salt on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when she liked the picture, the lady took the picture. You're right. The lady took the picture and gave it to her, because now, the moment she put salt on the table, she basically became hospitable to that person by any means necessary. Thank you for bringing that up. That's one of the customs in the Middle East. He's right. He's right on that.
Is it safe to say, when you come into, let's say, the truth, would knowing the covenants maybe be the first thing you would want to start off with?
Absolutely. You know, I did the teaching on the blood covenant, threshold covenant, and the soul covenant. And now what I found out is that those three teachings that I've done, they're not really the essence of the covenant. They are the rituals that ratify the covenant. Basically what I did, I wanted to understand the Torah better. So I did blood covenant, threshold covenant, and the soul covenant. Well, the blood covenant in Genesis 15 is called a royal grant covenant, that Yahweh promised Abraham the land and the promise to his children forever. That's why we need to go back to the land, because that's an unconditional covenant. It was the Lord who walked through the pieces, remember? Mm-hmm. And Abraham didn't walk through it. So this one is an unconditional, which explains why Yeshua had to die. Because he guaranteed, he walked in between the pieces on behalf of Abraham. So when Israel disobeyed the covenant, Yeshua took the penalty of death away from Israel to stand on her behalf because of that covenant in Genesis 15. So when you go back to the ancient Middle East and you understand the land, the ancient, what is called suzerain vassal covenants, do that research. Go to my website, wisdomandtorah.com, register, and then go look for yeshiva, and I'm going to have a huge in-depth study on ancient Middle Eastern covenants. The introduction is 3.5 hours. And you can go take your time and watch it. And now I've come to realize that's why the last 6 weeks I've been studying 12 hours a day. My wife finally said, you got to stop. Because I finally understood that the Father was taking me to the essence of what the language of covenant is. And then I understand blood now. Now I know why we need the sacrifices.
Because that was some of the things that I know when you did the thing on the sacrifices, you showing what the importance of the sacrifices were. And now seeing it with the covenants.
Right.
You know, everything lines up.
Right.
You know, and I hate this, you know, being from a Baptist Pentecostal background, you know, we're not taught all this stuff.
Not at all.
And when you get all this put together, you know, things are like way out here, you can just take it on just, you know, you have to take it on a frankly basis. But now, when you put those sacrifices that you, on your teachings and these covenants, and when you put them together like you did last night, things start melding together and forming the actual base. And
the whole puzzle comes together.
Yes, you will be waiting out here.
I am glad, man, because you see what happens is that why do they need sacrifices at the time? Because in a suzerain vassal covenant, what I mean suzerain covenant is that Yahweh is the king. And he's God. That's why we're a nation of kings and priests. Nation of priests, I'm sorry. Right? Because now what happens is that he is a king and he's got people who serve him. Right? So therefore what happens is that if I do something that I mean to do, the Father has found a way that we can be still and good. Because if you remember, when Israel says, everything that the Lord has said we will obey and do. That's an oath. That is, he established the conditions, and Israel says we will obey. They say we are fully committed to anything he says. Loyalty, undeniable, faithfulness to whatever he says. But guess what? Now they commit a sin that they didn't mean to do. So the one who has started the covenant comes up with a system of atonement. He's saying if you didn't mean to do it, then there's forgiveness for you. But if you do something willfully, rebelliously, that is treason. You die. See, we don't look at the Bible that way.
I didn't even know
See,
it's such a treason.
it's
That's
treason.
a good word.
Imagine this. When somebody says that the law of God is done away with, and then he gave his word. If you said the law of God is done away with, you called him a liar because we still have a rainbow.
That was one of the things you brought out tonight was exactly on that. And I'm glad you brought this up because I want this in case somebody, because I'm hoping people that's coming in are new that's going to listen to this and watch this video. You made it, or you showed tonight when you have new converts coming to Christianity, where you got them sitting there and they're saying, well, do you accept the Lord Jesus Christ? Or, you know, you brought out that whole thing about what
That's
that
right.
actually is. Give us a little.
Sure. And by the way, this is very important. One of the things that I found out is that the word confess in Romans 10:9, that if you confess that Yeshua is the Messiah and that the Lord, that the Father raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. Well, the word there, confess, is homologeo in Greek. And one of the definitions is oath, promise, or covenant. So when you declare with your mouth that you accepted Yeshua, you say, I come into a covenant, but that by the word of Yeshua, by the work of Yeshua as the Redeemer, redeem to who? To the Father. So he redeems us through his work of redemption. He shed his blood. He became the door and the guarantee to salvation. And therefore, by you confessing, it's like the password. If you want to get in somewhere, you need a special code to get in somewhere, some door. It says, hey, I'm here in the name of such and such. And they say, okay, come in. Well, you can't be in the house of the Lord if you don't go through Yeshua, because He guarantees when you confess, you came into a covenant, that through Yeshua, you're part of the house. That means undeniable loyalty and faithfulness to the King, who is the Father. That's why He says, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until I am in my Father's kingdom. You see? So anyway, a lot of this stuff is on my website. I pray that you guys go and check it out. Do not believe anything I say, go verify. But listen, man, if I would challenge you in one thing, what I would challenge you is to give this an opportunity and learn it. We are looking for righteous, courageous men who will stand up, and women who will stand up and say, I want to stand up for the promises and to let the world know that the covenants of Yahweh are eternal. Because it's blowing me away. Dude, I don't get a chance to sleep. So I call you dude, but it's an expression. But I don't even get to sleep very much. I go to sleep thinking about this amazing Elohim who is so faithful to want to activate a covenant with us. And all He requires is faithfulness and loyalty. That's it.
Well, one thing that I loved tonight what you did was you had a book, I guess it's a book of prayers.
Yes, it's a Siddur.
Siddur.
Yes.
Okay, and you was talking about some of the prayers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think you've sung some of it before.
Yeah, what happens is I use the complete article Siddur. Many people saying, well, that's rabbinical. No, that's Levitical, preserved by the rabbis. And that's basically were established, a lot of those prayers were established to follow the pattern of the temple. You know, when Ezra, right, the Nehemiah and Ezra and Malachi, when they came back from Babylon, they said those prayers together so that they will establish a pattern of a protocol of the king, how to approach the king.
That was a good thing.
Yeah.
How to, because we're not taught that here in the Western world, how to approach the king. Like, hey buddy, how you doing? How when he's a king, would you do that if the president of the United States came and you made that clear?
It's true.
You made that clear. You got protocols you got to follow.
Right.
But
you notice my end prayer, I didn't use the Siddur. But what the Siddur did for me, allow me to practice a language of royalty, that when I'm approaching the Father in the name of Yeshua, I'm doing it in a manner that is respectful to who He is and to what He does and to the honor that a king deserves, especially the God of creation. And so I could use now my own prayer, but I follow the blueprint. It's not to make you Jewish. It's to teach you the protocol of the temple, how the Levites used to pray in the service. I pray that you guys enjoyed it.
Oh, we did. For people out there, somebody, and I want to do this because somebody may don't understand things. If somebody was wanting to come into the faith and never been there before, what would the first step that you would take in prayer-wise and stuff like that?
To accept Yeshua, you mean?
Accept.
First of all, I think that...
From Hebrew.
Yes, sir. I think that the first thing we need to do is explain to the person the commitment they're coming into. The problem that I see with the way the church does it, they want you to accept Jesus and they scare you that you're going to go to hell, right? And they scare you to the point that you do whatever because you want to feel safe. And you put your hope in that you'll be safe. And He promised that. But they don't give you the conditions of the covenant that you came into. There are conditions to this covenant, and we have to be faithful to them. So if somebody would explain to the person, listen, this is a commitment. It's like in a marriage. They are vows, and they are oaths that you take. But you got to get to know the person. You got to get to know the character. So therefore, if you're asking somebody to accept the Messiah, it's unfair to ask him to know the Messiah. You don't tell them that keeping Christmas and Easter will be considered a breach and treason to the loyalty that He requires of you. But we don't look at it that way. So I think we owe it to the people to explain the conditions of the covenant. It's like buying a house. You're not going to buy a house without reading the fine print and the interest and how much you need to pay. This is a commitment, ladies and gentlemen. Don't take it lightly. I want to thank you guys for allowing me to do this.
I want to thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure, brother. God
Ladies
bless
and
you.
gentlemen, RICO CORTES, where can they find?
Yeah, Wisdom in Torah, wisdomintorah.com. And there I hope you can check in and sign up. It's only $10 for the whole year. And there you can watch over 250 videos and audio. And you guys have been on the website, so you know how much is in there. So I pray that you will be blessed and that it will help you in your growth spiritually. And remember, search all things Don't believe anybody. You let the word of God always stand true, and let Yahweh be Yahweh and everybody else, let it be commentary. Shalom, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, go to Wisdom and Torah, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of stuff there, and you'll definitely want to check out one of his teachings on there. It's with the actual about the Antichrist and the Beast. Very good teaching, and I want to say thank you to everybody. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Shalom, shalom.
We must cross over deserts, through the sun, wind, and sand.